Hey friends, Kevin Dairaghi. Welcome to the Kevin Dairaghi Show. Guys, today we have a super awesome guy. It's Fred Dummar. So he is a Green Beret. He is the senior VP of the Rich Dad coaching program, right? The Legacy Leadership Group. Like he has managed some pretty crazy stuff, right? So Green Beret, like he was senior up in this world, 30-year military service. And he's talking so much about leadership, right? And then also all these ways that all these pieces come together, leading from the front. Some of his crazy success stories, getting into mobile homes, some of his upbringing. Guys, it's fantastic. It's a great story with so much, especially leadership, especially by example. So come on, jump in and listen to this conversation with Fred. All right, here we go with our friend Fred Dummar.
Dummar, yeah, Dummar.
Dummar. Well, I like on your socials, it's Doomer, like the word Doom with an R. How did that come up?
Yeah, well, especially I think in the Army, I joined the Army when I was 17 years old. And, there's people already trying to dehumanize you a little bit. And if your name happens to be, sort of easily pronounced as Dumber, well, then that's, who you are. Right? um, yeah. So more along the way, I was like, hey, I'll make sure that people get this right. And then I also sort of, because I would pronounce it that way all the time, I sort of came by the nickname of Doom. So people would just shorten it and
Well,
avoid all.
Doom is better than dumb. If I
Yeah,
had to
yeah,
pick
exactly. If you're gonna go monosyllabic, right, you'd rather be Doom than dumb. So yeah, for sure.
Jimmy reminds me of Seinfeld. Like T-Bone, call me T-Bone. Like anyway,
Yeah,
it worked.
you can't really give yourself your own nickname. It never really works, right? You just sort of have to hang on to whatever people give you. So that's what I got.
All right, so we know that you have been this. So you're a friend of Mary Kane, right? Mary F. and Kane made our introduction. So the world of legacy and rich dad, poor dad, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like you were senior leader, VP, running all this stuff. Uh, but that's after all this beginning stuff. So you just said at 17 you went into the army. So how did this happen? What
Yeah.
does this
So
journey look like?
Yeah, so never, in fact, a year prior to me joining Rich Dad Education, if you'd have told me that, I would have thought, I don't even know what that is, let alone will I be there. Because from 17 years old through college and a couple of master's degrees along the way, I did 30 years in uniform. So and along the way, right, about 15 years into my 30-year career, this thing called 9/11 happens, right? So I
Oh,
have 15 years of service and then 9/11, and then I have 15 years of essentially combat after that until I retired. And, I didn't, like a lot of veterans, I didn't really know. I'd poured my heart and soul into that. It wasn't like I had extracurricular hobbies and was investing on the side, or I was doing what a lot of people do if they can afford it, right? It's like they just put money in your IRA, it goes into a money market account or whatever, and you hope for the best. And then during the transition, I felt like, what am I going to do? A defense contractor, approached me, offered me a job. It was a lot of money. I went right back to Afghanistan, and it was what I knew. And then at some point, being there as a contractor, no longer in uniform, I realized like, hey, it's probably time to get a life. It's probably time to get a life other than this. And when I started putting out feelers, for jobs and just starting to shop around, folks from the leadership from Rich Dad Education approached me, and I was very honest, like just what I told you. I really don't know, what I'm doing in this world. So I'm not sure I'm the right guy. And that's when the discussion went down. Hey, well, what we're looking for is a person of character and integrity, and what we're looking for is a change in our corporate culture. So we think you can be part of that. So I was all about that, but it did require an immense amount of study. I was I was on the road for weeks on end. I just packed a big bag and didn't come home for several weeks. I just went from event to event to see different speakers and hear different instructors and get different classes because I really didn't feel like I had much to add. And I was also a product of my Army culture, right? It's like I'd grown up from being a private, right? From a private to senior leader. And I realized, hey, the very best leaders I ever saw and the very best leaders that I wanted to emulate always had that approach, right? It's like, hey, remember, go learn what your company does in this case, right? Or in the case of the military, go learn what like the base, the entry level person does, and then, work your way up from there. Because if you don't understand it, you have no chance of leading it. And that's the same approach I took at Legacy. And, within a few months, there I was sitting across the table with Kim Kiyosaki. She's grilling me the same way, right? She's like, so what do you know? Right? And I was like, well, here's what I know. And because I had this really deep relationship with all of our new students, because I was in all the classes with the new students, so I could say, this is what our students want. This is how they feel. This is what they're looking for from us. This is the journey that they're on. And so, I tried to, from then on, lead the company in that direction, one that was providing, the value for what our students were paying for.
That's awesome. How many coaching or speaker groups did you have out there that you're managing?
Whoa. Yeah. In the US, we probably had around 10. In Canada, 3 or 4. In the UK, probably about 6. And then, those teams would also go to other locations. We had events being done in Hong Kong, Australia, New Zealand, all across the UK, all across Canada and the US. So it was a lot of being on the road to see, the different venues, because that's the other part, right? It's like you can learn the instructors, you can learn the people that are trying to connect. And I think it really goes beyond sort of, the easy button, right? Where people would just say, oh, it's just sales, right? But different people value different things, right? Based on culturally, where they live, who they are, and to connect with those people requires different speakers. So that's where I really started to find my niche, was like, hey, if we're going to connect with that particular audience, we need this type of speaker. And by knowing the speakers, I could more closely sort of get a hold, just because, a lot of times, and I'm not trying to be culturally insensitive here, but, somebody that's from that culture, right, resonates really well with, if there are people in the audience, like, wait a minute, that guy or that gal, they look like me. They're whatever, same religion, same values, same color, whatever resonates with them personally. And that's different for everyone. I think that helps them connect. And if you're really trying to elevate humanity with financial freedom, then you're really trying to make that connection. It's really not about selling them anything. It's really about, can I connect to them and show them a way, right? Or show them, because at the end of the day, I would always say, I don't really care whether they buy financial education. It's not right for everybody, right? But I do want to connect with them, with the audience, any audience, right? And make sure that they get the message.
It sounds like you want to show them what their potential future self could look like.
Yeah. And that was always, a normal part of whenever I would speak to students, would be, because people see you, right, in a snapshot, especially if you're a speaker, right? And if you roll up on the stage in a suit and tie and you're well spoken and you've got this anchor of authority, right? Because you are somebody, right? Because that's why you're on stage. Then people see you in that light, right? So at a lot of events, our big events, I would make a point, one, because I was there anyway, of going to when I was in the gym every morning, walking back by the students in my gym clothes, right? So it'd be like, again, it's like, I'm just a guy, right? I'm just a guy, that was at the gym this morning, and so sitting in the audience, you can be whatever you want to be, and you don't necessarily maybe have to be the mask that you normally wear. So maybe now, give yourself the opportunity to take off whatever mask you normally wear and try on the mask of investor, real estate investor, entrepreneur, whatever it is you want to be. because, right, you don't come to an event like that to learn about financial freedom unless, unless,
Unless you're hungry for it.
yeah, unless you're hungry, right? There's a reason, whether, whatever sort of philosophy you ascribe to, right? Whether the universe put you there for a reason, right? And so, yeah, get after it and give yourself the chance. And sometimes that is the people that are there trying to educate you, helping you along.
All right, Fred, I have to ask, what is this thing behind you next to your door? Is that like a little
Oh,
axe or
oh
something?
yeah. So that's cool story about that axe. Yeah, probably a little odd to see an axe hanging behind someone, but it's from my friends. I served with a bunch of Slovaks in Afghanistan, right? And so that's a Slovak axe. And there'll be some debate, right? If you have people from Poland or people from Slovakia, that they'll argue over who this hero belongs to. But there's this hero that they have called Janoschik, right? And so Janoschik in their culture is sort of like their version of Robin Hood, right? He's the highwayman that takes from the rich and gives to the poor, right? And instead of a bow and an arrow, like Robin Hood, Janoschik uses an axe. So as a symbol of sort of our friendship and service together, yeah, they gifted me the axe, so I keep it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I keep it hanging on the wall behind
Well,
me.
because I noticed it has like a longer handle. It's longer than a hatchet, but it also has a small blade, so it's
Yeah,
not, it's not like a two-handed battle axe or anything. So,
it kind of more resembles like a walking stick, or yeah, with a head that's slightly larger than a golf putter, right? But can get some velocity behind that thing.
I bet it can. Well, that much force with a small little point, that means it's popping through some armor.
Yeah.
Good. See, I love my history stuff. Uh,
Yeah, it was funny. Total aside story here. Several years back, my oldest daughter then was a junior in high school, and she comes home one day and she says, "Hey, Dad, there's this girl. She's an exchange student. She's from the Czech Republic, and she really needs somewhere to go because her host family's having problems and blah blah blah." So I'm like, "Oh, okay. We'll see what we can do. Do you have her parents? Like, let me at least." So I jump on a Zoom to talk to her dad, and her dad had been born on the border between the Czech Republic and Slovakia, in the days when it was Czechoslovakia, right before it went back. And he immediately, in that same accent, so there was immediate rapport that gained there. Right? He was like, "Oh
you're
yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah." So yeah, we ended up with a foreign exchange student for about 6 months. Yeah. Anyway,
Oh, that's
the
fun.
axe was a good opener.
So, all right, we're talking leadership, right? Because if you're rising up from private up and
Yeah,
you're running a large facility like legacy coaching or legacy leadership, etc., like the terms like lead from the front or lead from the rear, like I think of leading from the front as like a general pattern, right? You're up
yeah,
in the front, you're telling people where to go, even though it's not your job, but you're out there showing leadership, showing that you're present, which it sounds like you were doing when you're flying around seeing your speakers, right? You were
yeah,
there, you were present. And then lead from the behind, to me, that means you're sitting behind the lines, you're having everybody else go out in front of you, which reminds me of the general who I don't know his name, that was commanding Kasserine Pass, right, in
yeah.
North Africa.
Task Force
So,
Smith. Yeah.
so it's one of those like, uh, what leadership do you feel like you do, and how, what are some examples of leadership that you've
Yes.
seen?
So it's funny, right? That when we, I would say it's more nuanced, right? Than that. If we go to the polar opposites of lead from the front, I think lead by example is a positive, obviously a positive way to lead, because people know, okay, that person is willing to do the same hardship or the same thing that they're asking us to do. And not only are they willing to do it, they also understand what we're doing out here or what we're going through, right? Because if you're there with somebody, you have an intimate understanding of that. Now, but there's also a point, as you were getting to, right? It's like you're out there and you're too deep, you're too in the weeds. And so I would always, sort of my personal philosophy when I would counsel people, as during my time in service, folks that work for me, I would always say, leadership is really about being at the decisive point, right? So it's like, what are you doing, and where can you as a leader have the greatest impact? So sometimes, yeah, you need to be where the critical resources are to move critical resources around for your folks. That doesn't mean that you're also not at some point up front, but certainly in combat, as you get to higher ranks, your presence in some places is a detraction to the actual operation, right? Because then at some point people are worried more about protecting you than doing the actual operation. Like, hey man, we can't let the boss get killed here, on this, So so sometimes you don't always need to be at the front, but certainly that point that you made about leading from the front, I think it doesn't have to be always literal, right? It can be you're at the front edge of operations mentally. You're aware of what's going on, and you can put yourself, because that's the other thing. I think if you just sit back too far and try to manage everything from too far back, information that gets to leaders is filtered through other people. So sometimes, going out to the lead edge of where whatever your company's doing, and seeing what's happening there. It's an important thing, because then you see it, you feel it, and it's not filtered through anybody else. It's not oh hey, let's don't give the boss bad news, let's sugarcoat this, no, you see it for yourself, and then you can also go back, right, and then reinforce with the people who work for you, like, hey, you're not supposed to be shielding me from reality, right? It's like
I'm part of your team, like
yeah. It's like it all needs to, because that's really what leaders need, right? Is information. And I would always say I've never made a bad decision. However, I have made decisions with incomplete information. And when you make decisions with incomplete, and all joking aside, I never intentionally made a crappy decision. But if you don't have all the information, you can get there. So I think that's the real balance of leadership. The art of leadership, right, is knowing where to put yourself. And then also that the people that work for you, work with you, whatever the structure is, that they have trust. I would always say, what's the speed? What's the speed of trust? How fast is trust? How fast can you get to trust? And really, that's the leader's job, right? It's the leader's job, because the person that's coming into a company or joining an organization, all they can do is do their job to create trust. But the leader really has to trust them to do that. And the faster you can get there, then the whole organization works better, because then you don't have people questioning, why is leadership making this decision? Well, a lot of times they probably heard it from your mouth, but in the heat of, battle, or, when something's time sensitive and it just has to happen, if they know that you've been there, you've seen them, you understand them, they trust you, then there's much less of that second guessing in their brain, because they're like, oh no, that person has our best interest at heart. And I think that's where a lot of companies, a lot of businesses go wrong, right? Is they lose that linkage somewhere along the chain of command, the structure, whatever. There's a point where it's us versus them, right? And the employees and the management. And sometimes, we talked about all the, I guess the jet setting part of the job, right? When I joined and I was flying all over, seeing people, but it was also the people that worked in our headquarters, right? It was for lunch, wandering down to the marketing department and just sitting there, right? It's like, hey, what do you guys want to talk about? Or walking into the finance department. And I don't know if you've ever been in a lot of finance departments. Most people that really like math and finance, they tend to be kind of introverted. I always laugh. I would always, in the marketing department, right? Everybody's facing in, right? They're facing into this pit, and they're all talking, and there's stuff flying around. There's all kinds of creative stuff going on. And then you go into the financial department, everybody's staring at a wall with cubicle. They want to be separated from each other. So go in there and just like, okay, hey guys, everybody roll your chair out of your cubicle out here, and we're all just going to talk about something, right? You're going to look at each other because
oh, how long have you worked here? Yeah.
Whoa, who's that guy? But anyway, yeah. So I think that's a big part, and that's probably a really long-winded answer to your question. But yeah, it's right. Everybody wants it boiled down to something, and I think there's a couple of really good phrases that are out there that I think are helpful for leaders. And one that, if you're just trying to get a soundbite is, that leaders eat last, right? It's because it says so many things about leadership, right? That you are observant of your team, that you care about your team, that you realize sometimes for some resources, you can be the last person. You can be the last person. You can take your time to observe everybody else, and there's lots that they can learn about you from doing behavior like that. So
that's got to be crazy. So there's two different worlds, right? So there's kind of creating your business, and as it grows, right, you're having to create new middle management, new senior management, new entry level. Like when you start a business, like especially in real estate, a lot of it is mom and pop.
yeah,
Here, you inherited a very large organization, and you were at the top of it. And it's one of those, you had a lot to learn of how it all comes together. So which one do you think is easier or harder?
I think they're different, right? Because that's another thing I think there are a lot of businesses don't understand, right? Like you're talking mom and pop organization. Well, what happens, because you see it a lot in startups, right? A startup will have a core team of 10 people, maybe, we'll just throw out 10, right? And they all do a lot of things, and there's a high degree of communication, but there's also not a lot of rules, right? There's not a lot of bureaucracy, right? It's a lot of make shit happen. And I grew up in the Army and Special Forces, right? And so that's our base unit is a 12-man team, right? And I know how little teams like that operate. There's a lot of autonomy. There's a lot of just making shit happen, high degree of communication, trust, all that stuff's going on. Just like startups, right? But when they have to transition, right, there becomes a point where, okay, now there has to be an HR department, and there has to be a finance department, and there has to, and then people have to have meetings to talk to each other, and there's multiple people in those, and everyone may not know everybody else. And there's sometimes a problem there if the organization itself doesn't understand business life cycle, right? Like, hey, and a lot of times it might even be the founder themselves, right? Because how many startups, do you see where somewhere along the way, the founder, owner, whatever, suddenly, asked to leave the organization, especially, in the case of a big corp, when it gets to a huge. So I think they're just fundamentally different concepts. And so I think being diverse in your approach to leadership and knowing, okay, what the difference is, because I've also gotten the chance to be the CEO of a startup and right, running a 10-man, and I knew, hey, when this is up, when this plane's out and it's ready to go, and you start hiring on people, I'm not your guy anymore. Right?
I'm out.
I just want to do but I can build a core team and build systems and processes and all that stuff and set you up for the next phase. I just don't want to be part of that team. I'm tired of bureaucracies. And I think we all get to that point. Having been in them a long time, right? I don't think there's a larger bureaucracy.
You were in the most corporate type job that's out there.
You're the U.S. military can out bureaucracy anyone, right? You can. So knowing that, right, and especially after I had worked for Rich Dad, then I started because that was one of the things that sort of bothered me the most. We're seeing people in the organization that didn't live by what we told the students, right? So I was like, hey, I'm going to go buy some real estate. I'm going to get neck deep in this so I know exactly what they're doing. And so started, getting involved in real estate and, just out there. Because once you start trying to rehab a property, and then right, buying a property, starting to rehab the property, working with contract, then you understand, and I wouldn't call it like the same fear as like going into combat, right? It's not that kind of fear, but it's still fear, right? It's like, shit, what did I just do? I just bought this place. All right, well, let's get after it, right? Let's start solving problems.
Well, it's my first contract I wrote, my hand's shaking, oh shit, I don't have this, but it's one of those you don't have
and I still
unless you're out there.
And that's one of the reasons even now when I'm really, sort of don't work for any company, I still teach mobile home investing for a company because, it's one of the things that I love, right? It's like, I call mobile home investing, it's the gateway drug, right? It's like, and I tell my students, like, anything you learn here is applicable to everything else. It's just a larger scale, right? And so this can hurt you less if you mess something up. And you learn, in some ways, you learn skills that you might not learn with regular homes because you really get more in the nitty gritty of the communication process, right? You're in mobile home parks, you're talking to neighbors, you're talking to park managers, you're really involved. It teaches you a lot about how to do the business, and it's pretty straightforward, right? Like, I think a list, I would send my students a list of, hey, here's all the stuff at Home Depot that we would buy, right? Because they would be like, well, what do I buy, right? And I'd be like, okay, here's the cheapest toilet, and it's like, contractor grade stuff, and like, hey, don't over rehab your manufactured home, and anyway, so that list is pretty straightforward, right? It's like, a few light fixtures, it's like, hey man, take the lights down, paint the ceiling white, paint the walls gray, put some vinyl plank down, change a few, and get out of there, man. Get off the objective. But yeah, I really, really still enjoy doing that because, right, it rekindles my enthusiasm because I get to be there with people doing it their first time. And that's always been a huge buzz for me. Even, one of the things I really enjoyed doing, when I was younger was I was a marathon runner and then eventually an ultra marathon runner. So I got to the point where every marathon I would be running with somebody else, right? I would be coaching. Right?
Oh my gosh.
And I would run their first marathon with them, right, side by side. And people would be like, well, you know what? And one, right, it wasn't like a job. It was like I was doing this for friends and acquaintances and whatever. But I wanted to share that stoke, right? It's like when somebody finishes their first marathon, like, that release that they have, right? That sense of accomplishment that, it's like, man, I want to be part of that. And so it's the same way to me with real estate investing. It's like, yeah, I love teaching. Like, I tell the students, like, trust me, I want you, like, because a lot of the ways that I would teach the class would be, one class a week over like a 12-week period, right? So it'd be homework. Okay, now go build your spreadsheet. Now go find some parks. Now go talk to some park managers. Here's a conversation you can have, right? And like by the end, I want you to have one, right? I want you to, like, this isn't just, I'm not just telling you this stuff because, it's theory. It's like, I really want you to go put this to practice. In the same way with, marathon running. And one of my best friends in the world was blinded in Iraq in 2007, 6 actually, and so had his eye blown out, one of his eyes blown out, and the other optic nerve cut behind the other one. But he still really wanted to run marathons, right? So yeah, for about 10 years of my life, I was he and I were on almost every day for running. We were running together in the morning for training. And then, we did over that course of that decade, probably 45 marathons together. And
wow,
we climbed Mount Kilimanjaro together. We ran with the bulls, getting a blind man into Pamplona, onto the course to run with the bulls, a feat in itself. But, yeah, so, it's part of being there. It's part of, right. It's boiling leadership down to its very essence, right? That human connection. And I've spoken on the issue of veterans' mental health a bit as well, as part of my, hey, giving back. And I was like, you don't understand, when you're helping someone else, maybe from the outside, everybody's like, oh, look at that guy, he's running with that blind guy, shit, man, he's really doing him a favor. And they don't realize like how big of a favor he's doing for me, by allowing me to serve him in that way. Right. And then because, compassion goes both ways. Right. And it's just a beautiful thing. And it's a way, right. If you're really a leader, back to your point, right. How do you build trust? How do you, set an example? Well, you do the hard shit. And you do the shit that should be done, and you put yourself out there, and you connect with people, and that people will be like, what are you doing that for? I was like, well, shit. This one act allows me to demonstrate so many things that I think are important, so many things that resonate with my inner beliefs and then just there's so much simpler. Like if I was in his position, I would want someone to do this for me.
Yeah.
Right. So if what, that's like, how could I not? How could I not? If you're in that position, what does that say about you? Right. If you know you're in the position to help somebody and you're like, too much time. Right. I'm going to go do something else. I think that's a pretty damning, way to live your life, is to be that person. Yeah.
I think simply stated is leaders lead.
Yeah.
And you're not always cognitive that you're doing it until you look back and people are following you. And it's like, oh, all right. Just like in sales, right? You don't go out and say, hey, you can trust me, I'm honest. That's not how you sell.
No.
Instead, it's you do these activities or you show like, well, here's so many other people, or here's how, you basically, you're doing it by case studies that you've done.
Yeah.
Now that's more believable.
Yeah. It's funny that you said that. It's like when you look back, because that's a lot of the ways what I just told you, right? It's like looking back. I was just doing it because I was doing it. Then you start to think about why you're doing it, because people are asking you, like, shit, I never, I don't know, let me unpack this. But to your point about like looking back and seeing people follow you. So the last race that I did with Ivan, one of our like sort of was like, hey man, this is, we're getting to the point where this sort of challenge will not be achievable soon. And it was to run this race called the Marathon des Sables, and it's 150 miles across the Sahara Desert, right in Morocco. So we're like, hey, we're going to go do it. So of course we get off the bus, and all these people that are ready to run across the Sahara Desert, they're all, looking at us like, yeah, those guys won't be here long, right? They'll get the first checkpoint or whatever, because so nobody's really talking to us. It's okay, man. And then it was a stage race. Each day, like one day it was 30 miles, one day is 25 miles. And then fourth or fifth day, it was a 50 miles, right? It was like a really, really long day. But by that point, we'd been out there for a while, and people knew we were going to finish, right? Because they see us finish. It's the middle, it's getting dark, sun's going down, and we've got our headlights, we whip our headlights out, and we're walking along. We stop at this one spot right before a river crossing. We're like, hey, let's get our stuff together. Probably a good time to take a snack, so we were sitting there kind of talking, and I see all these people like stopping around us. And I was like, hey, what are you guys doing? And they're like, because I could see the lights behind us, and they're like, oh man, we've seen you guys finish every day. And we know that you're two, former, Army Green Berets. We know you're not going to get lost, and we're scared of the desert at night. So I'm like, okay, all right, man, you're more than welcome to follow, an old man and his blind friend through the desert, man. But,
I mean, that's how much leadership transcends this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And just like you noticed, you were a leader in the military, right? You could take that and throw it anywhere in corporate America, Fortune 500. It's the same thing anywhere. That's why we were talking earlier. I think the words leadership and entrepreneurship, you could just, and
entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship really is about that. Overcoming fear at its essence, right? It's like, because at some point you have to trade security for a financial freedom that you might not otherwise reach, right? So, and I was super fortunate, even though very non-traditional. I grew up in a very, very remote town in Nevada, absolute middle of nowhere. I think, when I was growing up, it was over 80 miles to get to a hospital or, like a grocery store or, other than the businesses in that small town that were started by my dad. So my dad had been a miner and at the one mine that employed everybody in that town. And he's like, no, I don't want to do that. And then he went to be a police officer, and he's like, man, I really don't want to do that. And then he decides he's going to buy this. I don't know how he thought he was going to be able to buy the store. He just did it, right? So, gets himself a loan, gets in there and starts, doing groceries. And then he realizes, hey, you know what? I've got this inventory, control problem. So let me start a cafe. So he starts a cafe, right? Because then where do you get rid? You can put food over there. And then he buys the gas station, and then he's buying trailer houses and building mobile home lots. So, like all this mobile home stuff kind of, takes me back to my roots, right? Of being a 12-year-old kid and laying underneath, mobile homes while my dad picks them up with his tractor, right? And I'm under there putting blocks and help, leveling homes. It's, I have an inner redneck that can just, I can channel for those type of things. But
is that what you call it in Nevada? Are you still rednecks out there?
yeah. If you're out there, during my time in the military, I lived 25 years in between Georgia and North Carolina. So I got plenty of redneck experience. But yeah, I think anywhere you go where people live rural, there's a lot of similar.
Check box. Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities to the way you live out there, regardless of whether it's the middle of nowhere, Nevada, or the middle of nowhere, Georgia.
All right, Fred, I have to ask, at
Yes.
what point in your life, your career, did you go, you know what, I'm going handlebar mustache? Right.
Okay. Yeah. It's
because that's
so,
a conscious decision, right? You're not
it
just
is. Yeah.
no shave November, and you're like, what about this?
Yeah, it doesn't just happen, right? It's like well. So as you might imagine, right? Through most of my career in the military, it was shave every day, and a haircut every week, right? And so it's like when I retired, I'm like, what's going to be my thing? You gotta have a thing, right? When you're retired, is it am I going to be the old cranky guy? Am I going to tell people they have to use the Oxford comma? I don't know. It's like what's going to be my thing? And I'm like, I started growing a mustache and a beard, and I'm like, I'm not. I don't know. The beard seems to be, maybe much. I had one for a while, but then it was like, oh yeah, handlebar mustache, got to be it. And I tease people sometimes as like, I'm kind of a happy guy. I'm a positive guy. It's like, I got a permanent smile, man.
That's how you look at it?
Yeah, the handlebar mustache is my, but also, I spent, a lot of time in Afghanistan. So I'd also, people would be like, it's like the Doc Holliday mustache, right? it's like the gunfighter mustache. So yeah. It checked a couple boxes there.
I mean, and you gotta trust anybody with one because, you stand out. It's like, okay, there's the guy.
Yeah, I'm also 6'5", 250 pounds. With the handlebar. So it's not. I'm not hiding. I'm not hiding.
That's awesome. Actually, so I was leaving Home Depot. This was actually just a couple days ago, and I had my lumber in the back of my truck. And I just saw this person walking out, shoulders back, not from my store, from like a Ross's or something down the street. And I was like, that person's got to be a leader, like somebody with authority. There was an aura around them.
Yeah.
She didn't have a handlebar mustache. I mean, that would have been a dead giveaway. But it was just one of those, you could tell people when they do have.
Yeah, right. It's like it goes back to all the things we've been talking about. It's once you've, and I would say transcended fear, because that's it doesn't give fear its justice. But once you've learned to move through it, right? Because people would make a lot of what is bravery? What is courage? What is that? How does it happen? And they're like, well, I've had the occasion to been shot at a few times by people that really didn't want what was best for me. They don't want me. They don't want me going home without a bullet in me. So, to think about it's that the fear is there, but that you act anyway. It's like you just compartmentalize it, set it to the side. However you mentally get there, and then you move through it. And for a lot of us that lived that way, we at the time adopted a pretty unhelpful strategy when we all retired, and we were trying to deal with our coming back to reality. And but it was, as soon as we started, we could identify what it was, then you could okay, this is what you have to get rid of. And that thing is that we would just tell ourselves. And for the first, I don't know, year or so, I don't know that we talked about it a lot, but then somebody said it and we're like, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing. And that was that we would just tell ourselves we were dead, right? Like, I'm already dead, right? So if I'm already dead, then it really doesn't matter. Why could I be afraid? It's like, I'm not getting out of this anyway, right? So I might as well do what needs to be done. And so that is one way. I would say it's probably not the healthiest way.
But it was relatable for the people that you were talking to.
Yeah. And that's what, when you talk about mental wellness, right? Because there's all sorts of stigma around mental mental health. And it really comes down to, what has that person been through? And then how do you, some things that are helpful, right, to you in one facet of your life are unhelpful later on. And one of the things I call it because I really hate some of the psychological terms, so I won't even mention them. But I would always call it it's the combat mind, right? The combat mind is feeds off of adrenaline, right? And it stays up at night, and your central nervous system is at a high state of readiness. And there's all these physiological things that happen to you in combat, right? Not just the stress of the actual event, but like all these other things that are happening to you. And what that does to your mind is, in some ways, it builds this unstoppable mind, right? Like, me, I can't be defeated. What? And for people of faith, I would explain this like it ties back to, it's like, because whether, if you grow up in America, it doesn't really matter, if you subscribe to a certain faith or not. We sort of, as a culture, have this thing running in the background, which is the symbol of the cross, right? And Jesus on the cross. And, so it's, your whole life you grow up with this symbol that's perfect love, perfect sacrifice, right? So if that operating system's in you, right, now you're out there and you're like, well, shit, nobody's going to be able to outsuffer me, right? Nobody can outsuffer me, nobody, right? Because that's the purest reflection of love and service to your fellow man, right? So, but it builds this, rather than moving you towards Christ consciousness, it can take you to a bad place where it's like, your ego is so protective of you that it's like, I can't be defeated. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not hurt. I'm right. And so you put all this, hey, I'm already dead. You label you. So to come back and integrate with civilian society, you have to peel that off, right? You have to, you can't walk around like Denzel Washington in Training Day, right? Right. You have to separate this combat mind and this way of being, but yet retain, as you and I were discussing, this our fundamental humanity, right? Our connectedness to each other, our fundamental ability to overcome fear, regardless, just like to step through it, and stay connected and not isolate ourselves out of fear.
You're giving me so many great quotes. Like, I think it's was it Rickenbacker? You can't have courage without fear.
Yeah, we're right, because you don't need to have courage if there's no fear. If nobody's afraid,
yeah, then it's like, well, then it's not courage, because courage is standing up and doing it anyway.
Yeah.
So our three tenets in our show, really, in our principle here, really is the most important real estate is between your ears, right? So we've talked a little bit about that. Your personal drives your professional, right? So you're talking here about mental stuff and combat mind. Like, how can you go out there and be a good leader? How could you be great in sales? How can you do all this stuff when you have a divorce going on at home, bombs are going off in your head? Like, what, you can't really show up and do those things, right? Like, it's really difficult to do those while you're personally suffering, right?
Yeah.
And the third one, it's all about relationships. When we talk relationships, it's relationship with yourself, relationship with others, and relationship with things. And you actually just pegged so many of these things without even knowing you were, but it is one of those. I really think a lot of what I think entrepreneurship or leadership, it really is applying common sense.
Yeah. It goes back to the very simple things that we've always known, right? You learn them, right? Whatever, kindergarten, right? Hold your buddy's hand, look after each other, treat, don't treat anyone the way you wouldn't want to be treated. It's like, if you stick with those, because being in this business, that just made me think of something, about ethics, right? And it's like, well, if you're grounded in integrity and that's who you are, then why are you even asking me a question about whether you should try and do this or do that? It's like, no, if something's broken in the house that you're rehabbing, then you fix it or disclose it, or yeah, and that's it's the right thing to do, because that's what you would want if you were on the other side of that. And it's really goes, like you said, it's common sense. It's all fundamentals. I think we sometimes try and make things too hard, right? Because we try and especially if it's an area of expertise, right? Like you want to impress somebody with the amount of bullshit that you can spew, and to me, I think the smartest people that I've ever listened to, or the people that have the greatest grasp of a concept, are those that can reduce it down to its essence, right? It's like they don't have to tell you, Pythagorean theorem to explain a pyramid, right? It's like they can just break things down and show them to you and illuminate it. And that's, I think, what you're doing here with you're trying to help people access an outlook that will help them move forward in real estate or entrepreneurship or financial freedom. And you have to be real, right? You have to be real and authentic. And you brought up a good point. It's like, how do you show up when you're dealing with something hard? And it is hard. And I think the only way we can do it at all is to be authentic, right? Is like, hey, either one, take a step back, like, hey, I have to deal with this, so I'm going to go deal with this, and then be back, or to let let your certainly your closer team know, hey, these are the things that I'm dealing with. I wouldn't, not everybody needs to know everything that's going on with you, but
but it's okay to let people in.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Right.
I think connectedness is, or lack of connection is, our biggest mental health problem in this country. That's we can point to all these other like weird things that are going on, but it's really about connection, because people that are connected are sharing things with other people. They're feeling the humanity of other people. But yeah, it's easy, if you isolate yourself, to lose that connection to humanity, to love, to the fundamental things that make the universe go round.
So, Fred, I usually do this way earlier in our conversation. I'm actually looking at our time. We've actually covered a lot of ground without doing some of these. But I love this question, right? So, in the beginning of the year, I did this episode about Eads Bridge. And I'm writing a book about this now. But fundamentally, each bridge is here in St. Louis connecting east and west, right? So if I break it down, it's dream, forge, finish. So dream, or a vision, right? Connecting east to west, manifest destiny, all these things we wanted to do, right? Mississippi River was great for a lot of commerce, but it was really hard to span, especially here in Missouri. It's over a mile long, fast current, steamships, all these things, right? The building material at that time was stone, wood, and iron. And those materials just couldn't do it, right? It just couldn't do it. Iron wasn't strong enough to make the spans, etc. What it needed was steel. And you got that through forging, which means immense amount of heat, pressure. You needed to put in additives or healthy habits, and you needed to get rid of impurities, bad habits, right? And then finish. You got to finish, because a half-finished bridge doesn't get you over the river.
No.
So I give you this question to ask you, Fred, what is one of your forging moments in your life, in your career, etc., where the iron of Fred couldn't do it, but the steel of Fred could make it over, like character-wise?
Yeah, so it goes back to a faith thing, which so I have a sort of an outline of how I keep a balanced life, right? And but it all starts with the foundation, right? Because you can't worry about all the other things, your finances, your friends, your family, you can't worry about any of that if you don't have the foundation. And for a large part of my life, I felt sort of agnostic, right? I wouldn't call myself an atheist. I wasn't like, hey, there is no God. I was I don't know, right? I was more in the I don't know camp. And so here I am, it's the early part of 2003. And I find myself in Romania with a bunch of my guys, and we're getting ready to do the 2003 invasion of Iraq. And now, this wasn't like we were going before the invasion, so shock and awe was not happening in the South yet. We were going to fly across the Black Sea and over Turkey and then into northern Iraq and link up with Kurds and help the Kurds defend themselves when all of this stuff started happening in the south. And sometimes you get too busy. You're just in the busyness of getting ready and preparing and all that. And then there comes a moment where, oh shit, man, it's about to go down, right? And that moment came for me because, we're ready. We've trained for months. We've been waiting in Romania. Now it's go. All right, there's plane, go. We're flying across the Black Sea, and have all the my guys in the plane with me, and I'm sitting on the tailgate, and I'm sort of thinking. I'm staring out at the and it's you really start to take stock, right? It's like, hey, wait a minute, whew, am I ready for this? What's going to happen? Am I going to be the person they need me to be? And at that point, like the fear becomes, a lot of people think about, fear to yourself. And I was like, I try and tell people, like, I wasn't really worried about me. I was worried about all of them. And what I was more worried about was a mistake that I might make that would get them killed, right? Or get, other people killed. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, like, hey, am I going to be up to this task? And it was at that point, I feel this, somebody touches me on the shoulder. So I look around, like, okay, one of the guys has gotten up to tell me something, but there's nobody by me. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, there's nobody. Okay, I don't know what's going on. And then I feel the hand again, and this time it's like somebody's talking into my ear, right? And I hear, as if someone is right there talking into my ear, and there's no one there because I'm looking that way out of the corner of my eye because I'm like, okay, somebody touched me again. Are they screwing with me? And I hear this voice, and it's like, have no fear, I'm with you. I'm like, so, it's like, how do you explain that, right? How do you explain that? It's one of those profound moments where you're like, oh shit, man. And people like, who was it? I don't know. The universe, man. I don't know, a guide, angel, St. Michael, hell, who knows, right? But it was, a message, from the universe that, hey, man, it's bigger than you, right? It's bigger than you, and it isn't all on you. You're just, right? And then you start thinking, shit, man, the whole path, right? The whole path of your life, right? You're at the point that you're at for a reason, It's like, so just take action there, wherever you're at. And that was the point where I was like, oh, okay, shit, man. Yeah, all right, we're here for a reason, and all we can do now is do it, right? And I really think, I go back to that moment in times of doubt because, it's easy to sort of fall back and be like, oh, shit, are we doing the right thing? But when you feel that connectedness, and I won't, I still don't tie it to any religion. I stay away from that. I'm like, hey man, I am a man of faith without religion. Right. So don't try and pin me down to, what I think God looks like or any of that. I'm like, man, it's just, it's love and light at the center of the universe. That's what I'm going with. That's what I feel. And yeah, it changed my life for the better. I already thought of myself as a good leader, and but from that point in my life, I'd always been at the direct level, right? I'd been at the, like you said, it's easy to lead from the front because that's where you're at, right? and I was making that transition to being a person who would be taking a step back, right? And so that really helped me make that transition because it was okay. Yeah, this isn't about you. It's never been about you, and you are part of something larger. You're playing the role that you're supposed to play. Keep doing that, and take care of people, love people, pour into them. And it was just it was the right, as is often the case, right? Moments like that, it's it's the right message at the right time.
Dude, that's powerful. So powerful. And it's one of those, in a world of religions and religions fighting religions right now, find the relationship. That's it. How
Yeah.
how does he reveal himself? I know a lot of people like to do Bible verses, and that's fantastic. It really is, right?
Yeah.
Word of God, learn it. But it's also like, are you living it? Like, what's your relationship look like? Not just what religion do you follow. It's not just the laws and rules and the paper, like the book up on the shelf. It's how is it working how are you using it and applying it? Because if you have all that knowledge and you're just a bad person,
Yeah.
then I think something's broken.
You're not, that's always been my point is like, sometimes we whoever, right, misapplies, what their religion's really telling them. And, and many Christians as well, right? It's like, you really think if Christ were here and watching what you're doing, that he would be happy about what you're doing or unhappy about what you're doing? And, that maybe if you look at it from that, because it also wasn't lost to me, right, on this flight that I'm on, that, a big plane is a lot like a big fish, right? And I was headed to Nineveh. So,
Oh, no kidding. Oh,
so
that's awesome.
yeah. So I was like, back to the Bible stories, like, oh shit, man, because when you recognize something funny like that, that's a coincidence in the universe, it's not a coincidence. The universe is telling you something. Hey, this is a story, and I'm going to repeat it so that it's me, right? So that it's real. Yeah, you're like, okay, man, I got to pay attention to that shit. Yeah.
I like to say there's too much coincidence for chance.
Yeah.
Because you're like, that's weird. I met all these people along the way to be here. Like, or when the question is like, who should I call? This guy. Wow, what a great story. So I like to ask you this: if you could give yourself like Fred now, right? So you're master investor, master leader. You've accomplished all these things, right, in life, and you have all these just great stories and leadership examples for all these people. But if you could go back and tell like a younger version of yourself, like advice, when you had this hiccup, maybe it was doing your first deal, maybe it was before you joined the Army or Green Berets, maybe at what point, if like maybe it was pre 9/11, like, hey, this is going to suck, but just hold on. What advice would you give yourself or somebody like you if you could go back and give yourself some advice?
Yeah, I think I would have. It's funny because one time somebody was talking about something, an older person was doing. It's like, it's so easy for us old people to be cool. And this lady was like, younger girl's like, look at me. She's like, no, why? I was like, because we don't give a shit, right? We no longer care what you think. And so if that was a piece of advice I would have had sooner, I think I would have, because I think, going back to a framework for a balanced life, I think it's easy to get distracted by what other people are doing and think, what, I should be doing that, because everyone else is doing it. And certainly in real estate, that's often a bad way, right? You need to be looking at the trend that nobody else, because if you're trying to buy what everybody else is buying, you're not going to make any money, right? So that's another reason I love mobile homes, right? It's like some places more and more people are finding out, and just about everywhere that market's saturated as well. I was like, but if there's any place, that you can sometimes make those, look for the thing that nobody else is doing, because it's not the cool, sexy thing to do at that time. And later, you build a bedrock based on that. One of the things I started doing early on, though, that did help me was I kept a notebook as a young private of everything that I would change about the Army when I could, right? And so, when I would make at a later point in my career, when I got to be in charge, right? It's like, and I changed some people like, nobody really thought that was, or like, how did you come to that? And I'd be like, because I made a promise to my younger self that when I could change this, I would. But I do think early on in my life, and in a lot of situations, I've had to relearn this lesson, right? That don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Don't worry about what everybody else is buying. Don't worry about what everybody else thinks is important. Build your own foundation. And part of that foundation should be faith, and your education and your training and your experiences that help you build your life's purpose, and worry about that stuff, and then go out and be a great human, and the rest will fall into place. But we're worried about other people too much.
All right, Fred. So here's another one. All right. So when you go through whatever ups and downs that our life has, right, especially in entrepreneurship, leadership, etc., like we do sift through a lot of burdens, right? When you give I don't say commands as an entrepreneur, right? But when we give, hey, let's do this. Sometimes there's a lot of pain or weight to some of those orders, if you call
Yeah.
it that. But what is do you have a quote? Is there a poem? Is there a song? Is there a scripture? Is there something that like you read or tell yourself sometimes to give yourself encouragement before you
Yeah,
make a
it's
decision?
it's my tagline. This one's easy. This is a layup for me. Yes, lead with love. It's my it because it always goes back, right, um, and it plays on multiple levels, right? It's both as a leader, right? Use love as your primary, but it's also put love up front, right? Lead with it, and it's just so important, right? And and I've said this at many talks, right, in front of many audiences, and like I am the because I give a little bit about my bio, right, and there's usually a picture of me in a uniform, standing somewhere with some other unsavory character, and like, hey, here's who I was, and like so I'm the least likely person to come tell you this, right, to deliver this message, but this is the message I'm going to tell you, and then I talk about the importance of love, and it's not, and sometimes it's hard for people to understand that because they want to make it wishy-washy, they want to make it romantic, they want to make it, and I was like, but you don't understand, okay? When I use that word, I go what's the first part of love in my book is discipline, right? It's like because if you really love someone, you're disciplined, right? You don't cheat on them. If you love when you love your kids, you put yourself out there for them. You're disciplined about what they get to do, what they don't get to. You're not so much worried about whether they like you. You're worried about whether they develop well as human beings. I was like, so, like, if discipline's not the, it's not. And I was like, I'm not talking about being hard. I was like, but like love, just put that first. Yeah, I sign off every time I write on Substack. Every time I talk to an audience, I put it out. Mental health care providers, I'm talking to them about, hey, how do you get to a veteran, right? Like, how do you get to them, right? Because there's somewhere you can't reach them with traditional therapies. Like, you want to know how to get to them, this is how you get to them. And it's like, and it all starts with love, as much as we have a bunch of, weird things that we don't like to, talk about, or, we're like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. But if you everything comes from that, right? Trust comes from that. It all starts there. So yeah, that's always running in that's the background script, especially like, because we all lose our patience. It's easy to get frustrated. It's easy, like, okay, all right, go back to the first principle, lead with love.
So obviously we haven't met in person or anything, but I'm 6'1", about 110, 210, but I'm a hugger. And I used to
Oh
run
yeah.
all these live events and stuff, and it started off almost as a joke, right? But anybody comes in gets a hug, and they're a room full of 100 people, right? And at first it was just my friends, and then somebody else that I didn't know was there. I'm like, well, so I started hugging them, and then just big dudes, little one, this, that. It's like, hey, like,
I'm the same way. And actually, I had somebody that was worried about my, my career, which I hate that word. When I was in the Army, I would tell people, anybody that used the word career, I'd say, you realize you're serving, right? This is service. You don't have a career. But when people would, hey, sir, I'm worried, because I would hug everybody, right? Girl, guy, whatever, right? And it'd be like, and I'm like, hey, I will worry about that later. If someone ever wants to accuse me of, like, this is sex, it's like, I don't care. I hug everybody.
yep.
Right. And it's like, especially in combat, people need the human connection, right? It's like, there's so many times, and I'm sure you've experienced this if you're a hugger, right? You hug somebody and they turn into a pup, right? It's all the negative emotion just comes pouring out of them, right? It's like, people need it, man. Go hug them. Go give somebody a hug, man. Give them a hug. Ground them out,
Yeah, which, gosh, we could go into so many little trails here, but it was during COVID, right? My wife is not a hugger. I am very much a hugger. We have 3 kids, but it was just one of those. She's like, "Stop, stop! I need a break." because some of them were trying to hug too. So I was like, okay, all right, she needs a minute.
Yeah, and you can tell when somebody's not, when they're bristling at that fact. But yeah, no, I mean, even as a boss, right? Like somebody's having a hard day, you go over there and give them a hug, and it was funny because the HR department, like, hey, and I was like, it's funny you should mention that because since I've joined this organization, I've had 4 females that work here come into my office and describe report sexual harassment that they did not report to you.
So
Yeah, yeah. It's like who do you think's in a better position here? So I'm not really worried about that. If somebody thinks this is sexual harassment, they're welcome to think that. I'm not going down that road. Everybody knows where I'm coming from.
I think people need to know it's okay to love people.
Yeah.
Right. And
it's okay. It's okay.
It's hippies, it's just one of those like, hey.
Yeah, we're not. It's not. We're not. Again, discipline. We're not in a hippie commune, but we can still be. We can still relate to the fact that we're human beings and that we're connected, and that love is the basis of our human connection, and get after it from there. There's lots of other stuff to be done, right? But we got to start with the basics.
If leaders lead, right? I love people because I want to be loved. So It's one of those like, dude, you give them what you want. It makes sense. All right. I enjoy this. This is just bonus talks now. All right. 3 books, if you could recommend to people, rapid fire.
Oh man, this one I wasn't prepared for. This one I'm not prepared for. Let me think. This one I would have to think for a moment.
Would it help if I said 3 influential books for you that have helped change your life?
I'm jotting stuff down here.
I know. I'm like, are you writing down? Are you like pros?
Yeah, I'm making a list here, so I don't because this is I'm on the spot here. I'm looking back at my library here.
Yeah, I mean, we can edit. I mean, we have that ability.
Yeah, I know you do. Well, let me go with, one is, and this will be a weird one. This will be from left field, right? So Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Okay, wouldn't have got there.
And one, because I grew up riding motorcycles all over the West, raced for a while, and still own and ride. But also, especially after my dad died, it really brought, some of those, those when I need to think, I'll still go out and grab a wrench, and I have an old, truck and tinker, right? And so it goes beyond the fact that it was just a book. It goes to the fact that it's resonated again and again in my life, right? And so that's one. The second one, the Bible. I think whether you believe it or not, whether you tie it to religion or not, it's an important read because other people are going to quote it, and if you know it, you're like, that's not what it says, or that's not what it means. Then it helps you stay grounded, because there's, as you probably know, there's a lot of people that go around saying things about the Bible, and you're like, that's not in there. And there's also a lot of stories that if you actually read it cover to cover, you would never hear in Sunday school. So it's an important document to read. With that, and I will say that applies to everywhere you go in the world, right? So like when I was operating in Afghanistan and Iraq, I've read the Quran, and I understand why it's important, right? So I think that kind of goes hand in hand. But I would say for me it was the Bible, because it sets a lot of the framework. Do I believe it cover to cover like a lot of folks do? I can't say that I do, but it's an important book. Number 3. This one's tough. This is gonna be another one that's it's a really short read, and it's gonna sound almost like is that like telling people to go read a nursery book? But it's called it's really more like a point paper, right? It's called The Defense of Duffer's Drift, and it's this guy that's writing it is dreaming, and he's serving in the in a war in South Africa, right? And so he's trying to think about how he would defend this certain place, right? And the first night he defends it by being on top of it, right? And everybody gets destroyed. And then he has another dream and another dream, and finally he comes to this realization that he doesn't have to be sitting on it to control it, right? It's in the low ground, and that he dreams how to position his forces to defend it. And when you're really young, you take it quite literally, right? It's like, oh yeah, he's talking about, but then it's one of those things where, again, the lessons unfold and unfold, because it's not just about solving the tactical problem that he has. It's how you look at everything, right? It's like, if you take something and sometimes your immediate reaction and how to solve it is, like his immediate reaction is like, oh, I got to defend this crossroads, right, at the bottom of this valley. So we're going to go down there and stand there, right? And it wasn't the right answer. So, but it also speaks to, he was working this out, right? So it's like, take some time sometimes and think about things, but also goes to something metaphysical, right? It's like your subconscious and your ability to tune in to the universe, right? So it's like sometimes just give your subconscious a problem to chew on, and you might come to a better solution than just what's at the front of your immediate logical mind. So yeah, those are three that I would probably, very, very strange books, I guess, other than, you probably get the Bible from a lot of folks, but those others maybe not as much. But
no, I don't think those have hit the radar yet.
Yeah, because I could always go. Everybody would throw out like easy ones on mindset or whatever, but I was trying to go with ones that were really foundational for me as a young person.
Well, so you'd go on motorcycle rides or tinker in the shop, right? I mean, that's where, like, a shower for me, or like doing a long car ride, you just find that place or like a power nap, and then you wake up and essentially like, that's the answer.
Yeah. No, that I would tell people, like, some people would ask, like, what do you think about when you run 100 miles? And I was like, well, sound weird. I was like, but it's a form of meditation, right? And I was like, you reach a spot where you're so physically tired, and you're so emotionally tired, but that your brain, slows down to a point where you can really deep think, like you're talking about. It's like this meditative state where you're like, oh shit. Well, I wish I could just naturally meditate this way and not have to get to mile 70 in a 100-mile race.
Did I need that first 50 miles?
Yeah, it's like because it only comes, right? It's like, does it have to be at 2 a.m. at mile 70 that I reach this spot? And but that's when it would come. So I'm like, okay, all right, gotta go chase that spot.
All right. Since you're a leadership guy, if you could hang out past or present 3 leaders, who would you want to learn from?
Oh, yeah. Number one is Abraham Lincoln. he's my number one, right? I have a whole library devoted to him. That's why when you were asking about books, I was like, I could name 10 about Lincoln that I think are, great reads, and, a great servant leader, right? The other, obviously, Jesus, right? And because it would be fascinating to me to really, what's written and what did he do and what's written? Because I believe he is who he is, or he is who they say he was, right? That part I don't refute. It's just like some of the stuff that gets written is like, okay, man, is that really how it went down? Just get that firsthand account, right? And then the other one's kind of a tie, and maybe I'll put these guys together. I'd like to, because this would be more of a panel discussion, right? I'd really like to talk to Tesla and Einstein, because I think, if you think about two of the more, because we always hear in the world, right? Oh, it's either science or it's faith, right? It's either, right? And if you really talk about two guys that were really showing the way, it's like, no, everything in faith can be explained by quantum mechanics and quantum, like it's amazing. The more we know, the closer we get to the things that we said you should just believe, right? And to think about two guys that were really, looked at as exceptional minds and exceptional scientists, and to know the deep reverence that they had for faith and for faith, and to sort of unpack that connection there between science and faith. So those would be three folks I think would be
I think
fascinating.
that's fantastic. Have you read that book about Einstein and Tesla?
Yeah.
I just read it, The Last Days of Night. That one?
Mhm.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Uh, Great story.
Yeah, I think we poo poo the connection between science and faith at our peril, right? It's like that's we just can't explain it yet, right? But doesn't mean there's not the explanation's not there somewhere.
I have to admit, I kind of was having Julius Caesar on my list because you were also doing when you were leading from the front
Yeah,
talk. I was thinking of his attack and defense of Alicia, where you
yeah,
kind of said it right, is he was wherever they needed him, wherever the action was red hot. He was there in his purple or
yeah. You got
his
to be right. It's like that. You have a lot of people in your organization that can make decisions. Some decisions only you can make, or only
yep,
you should make. Wherever those decisions need to be made is where you need to be.
yeah. But he didn't need to be over there pushing papers or helping. Nope. It was awesome.
That's it. That's it.
Have you ever read about Genghis Khan?
I have a little bit. Yeah.
Dude, that is one guy that is our Western heritage, right? Has tainted the Mongolian
Oh yeah,
Empire
yeah, yeah.
poorly.
We misrepresent a lot of people. In our Western outlook of how we look at military leadership, and it influences how we relate to people.
But Making of the Modern World, the history of Genghis Khan, I listen to it at least once a year. It's that good.
Awesome.
Just so much influence that they had on our today culture. Like words that are used, or like hooray comes back from there, like just the fingerprints that he has left. Pretty cool. Because we think he's just this bloodthirsty guy. Turns out he hates blood, like he couldn't see it. Like it's just one of those, like, not exactly how we learned it.
Yeah, not exactly how we put it down. Hey, Kevin, I'm gonna have to.
Yeah, I know. I was just having fun.
And I could keep going for a while, but my son is going to be in the pickup line, and so at the ripe tender age of 50, my wife and I started having our three youngest kids. So I have a son that's 6, and twin 5-year-old girls. So
oh my gosh, congratulations, buddy.
I have to go pick them all up at
Hey, you
at
get
school.
to enjoy it now, dude. That's
Oh
awesome.
yeah. No, it's great. It's great to being a dad at this. Again, it goes back to perspective, right? It's like being able to step back a little bit and think about the things that I wish I would have known, or go through life that way. So yeah, it's
Fred,
great.
I appreciate you being on, sharing your life and your stories. I appreciate you and your service that you've done for our country. We know freedom isn't free, and it takes guys like you out there, and it's really gives us so much respect. Well, one, to you guys, but also that you're representing us. Thank you. Like that is
Thanks,
fantastic.
Kevin. I love what you're doing. Love your mission of helping people change their lives, and God bless you. And get out there and get after it. Great talking to
Awesome.
you today.
Thanks, Fred. I so much enjoyed our conversation with Fred today. The us versus them management concept. It's actually just I think back when I had all these different crews working with me, and they didn't think I knew what was it like being hot and sweaty, and not just where you have to pop so many Advil just to get going in the morning. And it's just one of those, like, dude, I know what that feels like. I'm not an us versus them type guy. It's like, hey, I get it. We have different pros and cons, but anyway, I love it. I love the conversation that he has. The marathon running with his blind friend that he served with, and then in the ultra marathon through the Sahara, that other people started watching and stayed with them because they knew what they were doing. Fantastic. Closing out, I think this is something. Well, I think it's always good, play your game, right? Don't follow what others are doing. But on that critical point is the lead with love. And I was like, oh man, that's fantastic. Finding out he's also a fellow hugger, love it. But then when he talked about love, like the first step in love is also discipline. And I was like, wow, what a great way of tying a love, which is a bubbly, feely type feeling, with something more like tactical, right? Hey, discipline. Discipline also means like I do this, I don't do that. In the case of Eadsbridge and the iron to steel, right? Discipline is putting in the additives, good healthy habits, and taking out the impurities, like the bad things that don't make you as strong. So it's just to me, like that's what I thought about when I heard discipline was actually that forging process, those things that you need to put in there. But man, so much wonderful stuff in here with Fred. And guys, I just his service, his leadership. I mean, he could have wrapped it up and been done, but he went in and learning how to start up companies and getting into flipping mobile homes. I love it. What a great guy to meet. I'm so glad you guys got to meet him too with me. All right. Thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.